right, so first off, in my notes on Canvas and whatnot, you're going to see like a different numbering. So it'll say 4A next to things. That's because I didn't realize for section 4 and AP Cal, pre-AP, algebra, whatever we are, you know what class we're in our class, that there are 3 parts to this unit. So we're technically in 4A, then there's a 4B, and there's a 4C. Okay. As far as your notes go, you're fine. But just when you look and you see the weird numbering, that's why. Okay. All right. So we're on 4A.4 using linear systems to solve problems. So today's goal is about setting up and solving real world applications. Okay. So how do we solve them? Well, there are 4 steps. You're going to identify the unknowns, and we're going to label them using X's and Y. Okay. I know sometimes you're tempted to use other variables. Yeah. But just for the sake of us being consistent, I try to just use X's and Y's when possible. Now, there is going to be a time where Y equals MX plus B comes into play, and you may be solving for slope and Y-intercept, like using M and B. But we're going to create the 2 equations, and then we're going to decide if you're going to solve the system algebraically, graphically, or using a table, which is what we've been working on for the past week and a half. Okay, so you solve the system. Your final answer must be written to how it pertains to the original problem. Okay, so you can't just write 37 or 58. What do those numbers mean? What do they represent? Okay, I do not have my calculators back. So if you're a person who needs, you're going to need like a regular standard calculator. There are some right here, or you can just open your computer and pull a calculator. But if you do need a calculator, there are basic calculators that you can grab. Otherwise, just, now I can't guarantee that they all work, but there's a variety that you can grab from and multiply and divide. You don't need anything super fancy. We don't need a graph. You just need a calculator. All right, so let's do our first problem. So up first, it says the 8 pens and 7 pencils cost $3.37, while 5 pens and 11 pencils cost $3.10. What is the cost of each pen and each pencil? Okay, so we're going to go back through and we're going to be able to mark the text. Do y'all remember marking the text in your English classes? That was where you read once and then go back through and highlight, underline, or circle important information, correct? Okay, so we're going to start here. So 8 pens and 7 pencils cost $3.37. So pens is my first unknown. Does that make sense? So we're going to let that be our X. Pencils is our second unknown. We're going to let that be our Y. And cost means that it has to equal this amount, right? So it's following that same thing again, while 5 pens. So again, another unknown. And 11 pencils cost. A cost means again, an equal. What is the cost of each pen and each pencil? So we're going to look for our X and we're looking for our Y. Okay, that's what it means to go through and mark your text. So now that we've done that, we're now going to set up our equations, right? So we're going to set up our first equation. What is our first equation? I can't hear y'all. There we go. Okay, what is my second equation? Yes? Yeah. All right. So in this situation here, is this a substitution or elimination? Why will we choose elimination? The numbers, right? We have decimals. We don't have a variable that's easily able to isolate itself, correct? So elimination would probably be our best method.
Should be in a whole drill. Everyone, all students should be in the classroom. They're all the halls.
Okay. So we're asking, what is the LCM? We're going to do 8 and 5. What is the LCM between 8 and 5? 40. So we're going to need to change this one to 40 and this one to 40. What do I need to do to change 8 into 40? Times 5. So everything in the top is going to be multiplied by 5. What do I need to do in the second equation? Perfect. Times -8. Okay, 1 has to be negative, otherwise will they eliminate? No. So our new equations that we're working with are 40x plus 35y equals 337 times 5, which gives us 1685. Now we're going to do the same thing here, but this time we're multiplying by a -8. So we have negative 40x minus 88y equals 310 times -8. And that gives us negative 2480. If I did it right, then one of my variables should eliminate. Did I do it right? Yes. So my x's are eliminated. And I'm left with 35 minus 88, which is negative 53y. And I'm left with 1685 minus 2480. And that gives me negative 795. How do I solve for y? Divide. So I'm dividing by negative 53. A negative divided by negative is a positive. So y equals 0. And what does that mean in terms of this problem? 15 cents. That's the cost, right? Of a pencil. 15 cents per pencil. Make sense? All right, so now we know the cost of pencils. Now we got to find the cost of pens. To find that, we're going to use substitution method. Doesn't matter which one I substituted into. It does not at all. So if I use the first one, cool. So we have 8x plus 7 times 15 cents equals $3.37. So 7 times 15 gives me 8x plus $1.05 equals $3.37. What do I need to do? I'm going to subtract and then do what? Divide. So when after I subtract and divide, we get x equals how much? I'm waiting on you to do it. You subtract and divide. And tell me what I'm getting. I get what? I get 29 cents per pen. All right, how do we feel? Is that all right, so example number 1 is an example of a direct system, meaning that when I read this, it was easy for me to be able to see and set up my 2 equations. Yes, it was pretty laid out for me. These are your first, this is your first sentence, your first equation. Your second sentence, your second equation, right? Our second example is not going to be a direct, it's going to be an example of when we would use y equals mx plus b, okay? So if you look here, it says a shipping company charges a fixed amount for their services and a certain amount per mile they must travel. If a 50-mile trip costs $112 and an 80-mile trip costs $157, find the fixed cost and the cost per mile, okay? So key things here, when we go back and read, we have a fixed amount. I probably shouldn't use blue. We have a fixed amount, and we have an amount per mile. What are those key things telling me? They're what? We have a fixed amount and a per. What should you think about when you hear slope and y-intercept? That's what I was looking for. You have a fixed amount, that's your y-intercept. You have an amount per mile, that is your slope. So our format is going to be y equals mx plus b. Does that make sense? I have an initial, a hardcore starting point, right? And then I have a per, a miles per hour, a slope, a rate of change that's taking place. Yes? Okay. So for this problem, we're going to identify what each piece means. So Y in this case, probably should be a different color. So Y in this case is going to be our cost of our trip. Does that make sense? So that's our trip costs. What is our X? Our miles, our distance traveled. Does that make sense? Okay, so now can I set up my two equations? Yes. So let's our first equation based on what we have. It says 50-mile trip costs $112. 50x plus what? 112. No. Okay. So let's start that again. It's not. Let's talk about other things then. So I assume that we would get this. M. So your M, do we know what M is? No, we do not know our cost per mile. Do we know what B is? No, we do not know the fixed amount. These two are what's unknown. Not your Y and your X, but your M and your B. Does that make sense? So for our first equation, it's going to be 112 equals perfect. M times 50 plus B. Those are my unknowns. Does that make sense? So then our second equation is going to be 157 plus B. These two things are what's unknown. Okay? All right. This is an example of where it's the best way to solve is by substitution. Can someone tell me why our best method is substitution? I have a unknown with a leading coefficient of 1. So I can easily get this B by itself. So what does B equal? What does B equal? If I want to get B by itself, y'all, it's a little scary. Thank you. 112 minus 50M. All I need to do is get B by itself. Well, what I need to do to get B by itself? Subtract 50.
Thank you, Susan and Tina, for participating in the whole drill. The whole drill is now listed at the time.
Okay.
You're doing based on.
So now that B is by itself, I now can substitute it in. So we have 157 equals 80M plus 112 minus 50M. Why did I not need parentheses here? There's nothing being multiplied, right? There's nothing being multiplied. There's no need for me to distribute. It's just plus whatever it is, correct? All right. What are my steps to solve for M? Combining my like terms. So we have 80 minus 50 gives us what? Okay. What are the two steps that you're going to take place to get M by itself? I'm going to subtract and divide. So please subtract and divide and tell me what my M is. Okay. I've heard 1.5 repeatedly.
It's fine.
Yeah, 1.5.
What does that mean in terms of this problem? There we go. So it's $1.50 per mile. That's answer part 1. Now that I know the cost per mile, can I solve for my fixed rate? Yes, because I know what M is, so I'm going to substitute it in to find my B. So B equals 112 minus 50 times 1.5. And what do we get? So what does 37 mean? $37 is the fixed cost. Hey, do we see the difference between example 1 and example 2? So that one was direct. This one was an example of slope intercept. Yes? Okay, our last one is our indirect. It's a quantities match, okay? So there's variations in how you can see your systems. The part is just setting it up, and then once you get to the solving part, it's going to be the same, okay? All right, this one worked best with elimination. This one worked best with substitution. Yes? All right, last type that you can see, we have the drama club at Lincoln High School sells hot chocolate and coffee at school's football game to make money for a special trip. At one of the games, they sold $200 worth of drinks and used 295 cups. If hot chocolate sells for 75 cents and coffee sells for 50 cents, how many copies did they sell? All right, so we're gonna go back through and mark the text. So marking in the text, we know that we have hot chocolate, right? That's one unknown. And we have coffee, which is another unknown. They sold 200 because they sold, I know that this is what something has to equal. Does that make sense? And of drinks and used 295, and they used 295. Again, this is something that it has to equal. If hot chocolate sells for 75 cents, so my X is, and coffee sells for 50 cents, so my Y is, how many coffees did they sell? So I'm asking for coffees, which means I'm solving for Y. Yes? Okay. So when we said that this is talking about quantities matching up, you're looking at your first equal. So our first equal that we have is 200 equals. 200 is money, right? What's going to help me figure out what my money is? The things that use money. So we have 75 cents and we have 50 cents. Does that make sense? So we have 75X and 50 cents Y. So what's my second equation? What is it going to start off with? Yes. Hello.
Bro, it's always this class
Yeah.
period, bro.
Yeah, she's living. She leaving? Okay. got it. We're good. All right. So then 295. And so what is 295 equals? It's just your X plus your Y, right? It's not asking for quantity. It's asking for the quantity, not the cost. Does that make sense? And do we currently know what our quantity is? No, that's what we're solving for. All right. Next, it says to solve for your coffees. Does that make sense? So if I'm solving for coffee, coffee is which variable? Y. So in the case of this, I need to substitute in for the X because I don't need to know the X. I just need to know my Y. So get X by itself and solve for my coffee, please. I believe in you. You got this. All right, so to get x by itself, we had to do what? Minus the y. So we get x equals 295 minus y. Now that I know what x equals, I'm going to substitute that in. So wherever x is, it now becomes 295 minus y. So we're working with 200 equals 0.75, but instead of x, it now is 295 minus y plus 50 cents y. I'm going to distribute. So back to your 4.2 notes. After we distribute, what is 0.75 times 295? So we have 200 equals 221.25 minus 0.75y plus 0.50y. Now I'm going to combine like terms. What does that equal? 221.25 minus 0.25y. What are the steps I take to get y by itself? I'm going to subtract 225 and then do what? So we're left with negative 21.25 equals negative 25 hundredths. Then what's the last step is to divide. So after we divide, what are we left with? Y equals 85. So we get 85 equals y. And what does 85 mean? Cups of coffee. And is that all it wanted me to find? It just said how many cups of coffee was sold. Did it ask about hot chocolate? Nope. Did I figure it out though? Yes, but it didn't ask. Okay. All right. So the fire drill stole our time, but there is an exit ticket. I strongly encourage you doing that exit ticket during your win time. Be productive, test your skills, attend tutorials if you're stuck. No, you're doing now is to check your assignment with each other.